But for more reaction, I'm now joined by the head of security and extremism at the Policy Exchange, Paul Stott. Paul, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company on such, let's be honest, a dark day not just in Britain, not just for the Jewish community, but I think for all of us. We have a lot of thinking to do about where we are as a nation. We need to have a period of great reflection, I believe, and perhaps the political class needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror at how we got to where we are today.
I think that's right, Martin, and unfortunately it's a road that we've been travelling on for some years, and indeed I was just going back through some bits and pieces on anti-Semitic terrorism in Greater Manchester, and there was a terror plot targeting local Jews way back. Two people were convicted in 2012, so this certainly predates 7/10. We've, I think, got a reaction from others, and indeed one that I would echo, that whilst this is shocking and horrific, the one thing it is not is a surprise.
And Paul Stott, we were speaking here in the studio, myself and Emily Schrader, that globally we seem to have this, I hate to use the word two-tier, but we have had a two-tiered approach, many people think, to how this has been policed in terms of the protests since October the 7th, 2 years ago. In the actions on the streets, we've seen people clambering over war memorials. We've seen grotesque anti-Semitic signage. We've seen children dressed as suicide bombers with police posing for selfies with them. I mean, we've just seen stuff on the British streets that if it were flipped, if this was some kind of mythical far right, there'd have been a huge, huge clampdown. Am I completely unfounded here in saying there has been a kind of soft mollycoddling of this type of protest, and perhaps that's emboldened people out there, and in the end, there's going to be somebody out there who will take it too far?
Well, there are unfortunately other examples, Martin, you could have given there. And indeed, you may remember how the authorities seemed to struggle to take any action when people, I think back in 2023, were calling for jihad on some of these protests. And there was a lot of sort of weasel words from the authorities as to why people couldn't be prosecuted. I mean, if you want to know the reality, you actually have to look at the what's happened today, but also the fact that there seems to have been some sterling work done by the security team at this synagogue. There's no doubt at the local level, people know full well what the threat is, and they know they have to react to it. And in doing so, may well have saved further lives today. So the people out there do know. It's whether the authorities have got the strategy right for countering this, and whether they've been using all the tools that they have in order to respond properly. And that's going to be the debate that we'll have to have over the next few weeks.
Paul Stott, in the aftermath of the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017, which killed 22, including young girls, and it injured over 1,000 others, it was don't look back in anger. It was let's light candles, let's have prayers. Hasn't worked. That approach hasn't worked, has it? It hasn't worked to ask for together. And nobody is saying here that we should have more division, but I'm putting it to you from a security and an extremism point of view, Paul Stott. We've got to do more than just expecting people to pray and move on now.
Well, the response shouldn't be to hold hands and light candles. The response should be to get it right. So we put these attackers and those who support them, those who encourage and those who've brought us to this situation, that we can put them to flight. That's the response that we need, and that's the debate we must have in the next few weeks. I mean, you mentioned obviously the Manchester Arena response, but if you think back to the attack on Sir David Amess, we seem to have some very peculiar debates there, not about Islamic State or terrorism, but about social media and people saying things on social media, an entirely misguided debate. So this time we need to get the focus right. And that's what we should be concentrating on over the next few days and weeks.
Paul Stott, can I ask you a question, a bit of a curveball here, but it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. I've spoken to so many people from the campaign against anti-Semitism, so many Jewish writers, campaigners, practitioners, and they've all said one thing to me: there's going to be an attack on British soil at some point in the future, and it's happened. And do you think it's fair to say that anti-Semitism is almost now the acceptable form of racism in Britain? It's almost fashionable amongst the middle classes, almost fashionable amongst the intelligentsia and the liberal left. And of course, alongside that, and we don't know the motives of today's individual yet, we may learn more as the hours move by, but then of course we can dovetail into that the rise of radical Islamism. We seem to have this unholy brew that's happening in Britain that ferments the kind of hatred that results in something like today.
I think it's been one of the characteristics of anti-Semitism that it sort of receives new blasts of support from different angles, from different areas, different ideological belief systems. I mean, you've touched there on the Islamist strand to it. You could have the far right, to an extent the far left, and also a whole mountain of nonsense which comes from conspiracy theorists and other such people. So when you add all that together, it becomes a real problem, and that's going to be one of the debates over the next few weeks. How do we cut this problem? How do we, if you like, begin to lance the boil? Because this has been predictable for a very long time, I'm afraid.
Okay, Paul Stott, thank you for your expertise joining us today. That's the head of security and extremism at the Policy Exchange. Paul Stott, thank you for joining us.